The following is a presentation of the Boltup Sports Media Network.
Here comes pressure, throws it to Eckler on the screen. He's got a block to the 10, to the 5, into the end zone.
High pass. Did Williams make that catch? My goodness.
For a first down, Herbert with time. Now running out of time. Throws on the run. Down the sideline. Caught in the end zone. Keenan Allen for the touchdown.
Throws, and again it's intercepted. And that's Asante Samuel.
Here's another one. Watch out.
How did it feel when Derwin James absolutely powerbombed the out of you on national television?
You're listening to the Shock Therapy Podcast with Tyler Lawrence and Zach Alfers.
We are 94 days away from kickoff of the start of the new season. This is the dead zone, dude. Like, I'm so bored with no football content really out there. We're in OTAs right now. We got a wide receiver who's looking pretty good out there making one-handed grabs. He looks athletic. What can you tell me a little bit about what you've heard or seen from OTAs?
I think that's the big one. Quintin Johnson, really impressing early on. You mentioned the highlight catch, but I've been really impressed, and so have the coaching staff and the media on site with his route running ability. Turning guys around. He made Asante Samuel fall to the ground on just a basic slant. I think either last week or I think it was last week. Just faked it out, came inside on a slant, and Asante Samuel, one of our better corners, had no idea what to do. And I think that's what we're seeing early on coming out of OTAs. And I know where pads aren't even on. It's 7-on-7. You're seeing a lot of our second string offense with Mike Williams and Joshua Palmer kind of nursing injuries, respectively. We're seeing some young, not maybe our first string receivers and skill players absolutely beating, if not dominating, our starting seven as secondary. So I think early on, that's not typically what you see. I think a lot when you're not in pads, you lose a lot as a defender. So not everything is game day ready, but excited. You're seeing the young guys kind of gel with the returning veterans. Exciting news to hear that Justin Herbert's expected to throw a football sometime this week. Like you said, that we're picking up things. We're picking up practice. We're talking about practice, not even like physical, like actual practice that's going to make us better. This is walkthroughs. These guys are in shorts. Yeah, the helmets are on, but there's only so much you could tell. I think that those are the little bits that I've kind of, can hold on to and get excited about. But beyond that, it's way too early. Excited for those pads to come on and actually getting into, looking what this offseason training program is going to look like in more depth. And then we're still a couple weeks out from something like that.
Yeah, it's like this whole dead zone part of football from OTAs till training camp is just kind of like no man's land in terms of football content. Yeah. The only thing I really have to go off of is the athletic and what Daniel Popper's been saying. Look like from when was this last article? This article was about a week old. And then you're hearing about Easton Stick showing off a little bit in 7-on-7 drills. But it's really not a whole lot going on right now. Right now, today is the Chargers charity golf tournament. Justin Herbert is in attendance. I don't think he's swinging. I think he's still nursing his shoulder.
There. Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of there. I saw LaDainian Tomlinson was out there looking sharp in his polo. But it's just kind of like not a whole lot going on right now. Something kind of surprising. Go ahead.
One little nugget that I forgot to mention, and I don't know where I read it. I think I read the Daniel Popper stuff like religiously, so it'd probably be the Athletic. If not, and if it is another media guy, then I want to give credit there. But I was reading an article about Keenan Allen talking about Kellen Moore and just gushing over this guy's knowledge of the game. But then what really stood out to me was, Kellen, when I come to him with issues and I'm like, this isn't going to work for me or this guy or what we want to do here, he's willing to adapt and make adjustments and make it make sense to the players, which I think is that's what makes the good coaches from the bad coaches. And I think a big part of my frustration with Lombardi press conferences, he was saying the right things. He came, and as a media presence, he was saying the right things. It was implementation and just the consistency for on and sticking to an offense that wasn't working, and his just stubbornness and inability to flip the game script and make halftime adjustments was so critical to was so impactful to our team and really held us back these last couple of seasons. So hearing that from a guy like Keenan Allen, who's been around the block, who's been in successful offenses, and he's been in some that have not been super successful, for him to talk about Kellen Moore's willingness to be be a sponge and be able to mold his concept around the guys who are going to actually, make the plays. I think that's really, really important. And I'm excited to see what that offense looks like with guys like Keenan Allen having so much influence.
And you also you're talking about the interview where he was talking about the press conference from OTAs a couple days ago, I think.
It might be. It was definitely what I was reading was a transcript of a press conference.
Yeah. So
where I got
actually,
it, I don't know where it was.
I don't remember who asked him the question, but somebody asked him the question and he actually kind of laughed a little bit. He was saying, I think Keenan Allen, you're on your 5th offensive coordinator. And he sat there and he was like, 5? Like 5? And he's sitting there and he had that really had to dig deep because this guy's in year, 10 now, right? And you're talking about Frank Reich. You're talking about Shane Steichen, Joe Lombardi, and Ken Wisenhunt. And now this is his 5th, I think, right? So he's been around the block a little bit. He's been played under a lot of different guys who are now head coaches, right? Frank Reich is a head coach. Shane Steichen's a head coach. Ken Wisenhunt was a head coach. Kellen Moore has been getting interviews previously in the past for head coaching positions. So it's not even like the Chargers have had bad play callers, right? It's been more of just charging is what it's been. Because these offensive coordinators have left the Chargers and gone and found success elsewhere. But for Keenan Allen to sit behind each one of those guys who is now a head coach or at least been a head coach at one point in time and has all this praise for Kellen Moore, that holds weight. That holds a lot of weight. So, yeah, I like it, and I'm kind of excited to see where it goes this year. He doesn't run a completely different offense than Joe Lombardi does. Maybe his tendencies are a little bit different, but a lot of the concepts are pretty similar. One of the things I did see on Daniel Popper was that Max Duggan had a fine day throwing the football, had 5 touchdown passes in practice. Kind of came on busted coverages, but nobody was kind of expecting that. What else do we got here? That's really all there is going on right now. Rashawn Slater is back to 100% healthy, has been for the last couple of months. He talked about that in his press conference. We've already talked about the Austin Eckler renegotiation of his contract. We're going to be getting a kicker battle between Dustin Hopkins and Cameron Dicker. And then the Chargers waived Damon Lloyd on Wednesday and brought in, I think it was another wide receiver who's going to be a kick returner, punt returner competition in training camp. So that seems to be the gist of all the Chargers news. Anything else you got to kind of put to that? Or are you ready to get into some of these UDFAs? I'm
ready to get into it. I think we've covered it and some, if not repeated ourselves about, OTA updates. So I'm ready to get into these undrafted guys.
Well, let's get into some of these undrafted guys. I'll let you go ahead and go first. I went and kind of looked at real briefly the film of 4 different players. Which players did you end up looking at?
I went with Elijah Dotson, the running back out of Northern Colorado. I kind of have like a brief double. I wanted to go look at the D end guy and Farmer and Brevin Allen, outside edge guys. I kind of looked at both of them because I don't think I think we're only going to keep one guy at the position. If we do, it's going to be a practice guy, but I wanted to touch on both of them briefly. Then I also looked at Terrence Lang, and I closed it out with Tywan Mullen.
Nice. All right, I'll let you go ahead and go first. Who are you going to talk about first?
Yeah, I picked Elijah Dotson just because I work with one of his former teammates because he actually began his career right down the street from me at Sacramento State. Was a Big Sky all-conference first-team selection when he was there. Transferred to Northern Colorado last season. Little step up as far as competition, and because of it, earned second-team all-conference. But was a really, really big impact for that Bears team. Led the team in rushing and in scoring with 933 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground. Also can impact the game as a pass catcher. Hauled in 48 passes for 300 yards, another 2 scores there. And the interesting part for me, because at this time when I was looking at him, we didn't have that second kick returner guy in-house. But Dotson also handled all the kick return duties for the Golden Bears, finished with a solid 19.4 yard per return on 13 career attempts. Only fielded 1 punt return, but absolutely killed it, hit the hole and took that thing all the way back for an 82-yard touchdown. So I like his flexibility as a returner of the future. He's a little guy, 5'9", 200 pounds, ran a 4.5 at his pro day back in April. But a bit of a grinder. You wouldn't expect him to be like one of those bruisers, but strength is actually absolutely going to be one of his calling cards at the next level. Threw up 21 bench press reps at his pro day as well. Ooh. And so I like him for a couple reasons. Larry Roundtree needs some competition as the practice squad back. I liked that he is slated, as their number 2 kick returner at this time. Right behind him on the depth chart is Joshua Kelly. I like Joshua Kelly. I don't think that's a fit for his skill set. I love him much more as one of those wedge guys, blocking and leading the way for the returners. And so I think Larry Roundtree has been a little comfortable as a practice squad back. I think we're set at the top of the depth chart with Eckler, Isaiah Spiller, and Joshua Kelly kind of really holding on to that RB2 role. But I would like to, if the camp is there for a guy like Dotson, to move away from Larry Roundtree. Haven't been impressed from the guy. We liked his ability as a bruiser, but we really haven't seen him bring that physical running style that he had at Missouri and use it at the NFL level. Now he's had some crazy offensive line issues, but I'm not saying move away from him, but I do want some more competition for him as that practice squad back. And I think Dotson brings a little more return juice than Roundtree does at this point.
Yeah, so I actually broke down another running back. I'll get to him later because I'm struggling to find my notes. Until I get back to those notes, I'll talk about Gerard Clark, who seems to be the most popular undrafted free agent right now. 6'3", 334 pounds. He's a true nose tackle. Grew up in Boston. Started playing football at 7 years old. Was coached by his father throughout his whole youth levels. Ended up playing tight end and wide receiver and on the defensive line in high school, which is kind of a weird combination to even be playing.
That is weird.
Yeah, it's just a little bit weird. And then he goes and he packs on 100 pounds and moves over to Coastal Carolina and becomes a true nose tackle. He's a big dude. Three-star recruit out of high school. He was the number 78 overall tight end in 2018 recruiting class. He entered the picture and gave him he was at that was the only FBS offer that he actually ended up getting. Why are these notes so tiny, man? I'm struggling to I can't zoom in. There we go. Sorry. So he moved to the offensive line briefly in college and then ended up moving to the defensive line in 2019. Kind of a sad story. So his older brother was shot and killed in September 2016. His daughter was just recently born. He graduated a degree in recreation and sport management. and he was a member of the 2023 Senior Bowl. So kind of a bad background, kind of the story that, got him to this point. Has had some injuries. He suffered a back injury that required off-season surgery in 2020. Third team All SBC, whatever that conference is that Coastal Carolina plays in. He's also blocked a couple field goals. Team captain last year. Not super athletic, or he's a big clog in the middle, right? That's kind of what he does, what he is. Massive frame, really girthy, long arms. He's just a big body who's going to sit there in the middle, and he's going to clog up rushing lanes. That's just what he does. He walks defenders back into the quarterback's lap. He moves better than his size would typically suggest, because he's kind of that, he's got that tight end basketball background. But he's not like, he ran like a 5'3", 40-yard dash. So he's not moving around too well. I think it's more of just like a quick off the snap type of thing. His weight has fluctuated quite a bit, and not always in the best way. Plays controlled, not super rangy, doesn't have that quickness or anything like that about him. Just not really a true pass rusher. He's purely going to be in for running downs. That back injury with an L4 disc, spinal surgery, which is terrifying, which is probably why he didn't get drafted in the first place. I know that the Draft Network had him rated as a 3rd-round draft pick. Ends up going undrafted. Dane Brugler had him as a 7th-round draft pick, so kind of all over the place. He just kind of relies on raw strength rather than technical skill to win battles in the trenches. He's got size. He's got length. He has some tools to eventually make this roster. And I think if there is any player on this roster with a chance of making the 53-man roster, it's going to be this kid, because I think we're a little bit more thin on the defensive line. But it's going to depend on what is his health actually like, 2 years removed from this spinal surgery, and how committed is he to football at this point in time. He's got some minor off the field issues, nothing major, but as his brother getting shot and killed is terrible. I don't really know if he's like in that type of atmosphere around him, right? You are kind of what you bring yourself around. So as long as he's good off the field, doesn't have any negative issues, I'm totally cool with it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on the list. I really like our edge room. Khalil Mack had a really good year last year. We're excited to see Joey Bosa return from his injury. Really like the addition of Thule. And then you got Chris Rumpf as that developmental piece. Being able to rush the passer is so important in Brandon Staley's scheme. I think that's kind of why you saw us move away from Braden Fehoko, who was great in, run defense. Didn't give you anything as a rusher, a interior pass rusher. I think that's why Gerard Clark's fit is a little better. But because getting after the quarterback is so important, I do think one of these outside linebackers that I'm going to talk about here squeak onto the practice squad team, especially because the Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa are getting up there in years, with Joey coming off of that injury, which he's dealt with nagging injuries throughout his career. So I took a look at a couple guys at that position. Brevin Allen out of Campbell, the first guy, 44 career games, a 2-time All-American, 4-time All-Conference selection. He set the franchise, the school record with 38 career tackles for loss, second all-time in program history with 20.5 sacks. Big South Defensive Player of the Year in 2021 after he basically put up half of that production. 9.5 sacks, 17.5 tackles for loss, also added 26 hurries. Allen was at the Shrine Bowl, and I thought it was worth mentioning because Chargers the last couple of years have loved guys who show up to that game. Kept with the trend again this year, going with selecting Jordan McFadden and Scott Matlock, who both attended that game. Looking at Allen, he's one of those, and we throw this word around all the time during draft process, but one of those just freaky athletes, pass rush plan needs development. It is not there. He's really a untouched canvas. Nothing very exciting. If the coaches get excited about his athleticism, he's a player that is going to be very, very moldable because he's very raw. The other guy is a lot different, I think. Andrew Farmer, out of Lane College in Tennessee. He was an all-team selection or a first-team all-conference selection in 2022. Led the nation over his final 2 seasons with 44 tackles for loss and 17 half sacks in just 18 games. As a senior, 25 tackles for loss. That's what I meant. He led the league with the best per game average of tackles per loss. Was finishing a game with 3 in each game. And so he did that while playing at all different types of positions. He played at the 3, he played at the 4, all doing that despite being 250 pounds. And so because he's a little lighter, I don't think there's not really a fit as an interior pass rusher. Chargers drafted him and listed him as an O-line, outside linebacker. I think that's where his fit at the next level would be. But I think you're from his position, and he's also going to need to learn how to rush from a stand-up position. But he's a lot more reliable than Allen is. And so if you want a young, athletic prospects to mold, I think Brevin Allen is your long-term option there. And if you're just looking for consistency and want to build out that flexibility and athletic ability that you can't really teach, you got Andrew Farmer. But when I'm talking about technique and athleticism, I'm always going with the athlete because there's things like being fast, being strong, and being just super long, and that you can't teach. I could teach consistency. I can teach technique. And so Brevin Allen gets the hat there, or the tip, in my opinion, but you can't really credit out what the coaching staff does and what they're seeing behind closed doors.
I'll talk about Cameron Brown, Ohio State cornerback, actually a 3-year starter for the Buckeyes. I think the biggest issue is he's just failed to really stay healthy while he was at Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State pumps out so much talent that you can't tell me that this guy isn't talented. And yeah, I know you're not supposed to scout the helmet, scout the player, but it's true, right? Like, part of the best coaching staff in the nation. He's just really had a bad string of luck. 2020 had a season-ending Achilles injury. He missed 8 games his freshman year. He missed 5 games last year. And in 2021, when he actually was healthy, still missing 2 games, but overall healthy, he was an honorable mention All Big Ten. He's a big guy, 6 foot, 200 pounds. So he's got some size to him at the corner position. Really good frame, twitchy in the lower body. He's smooth accelerator, collect and go technique that really drives on throws in front of him. He's very coverage aware as a former wide receiver. He just understands the full route tree and tendencies, splits, things of that nature. Does a really good job sinking his hips in the short zone area, and he's a willing disruptor when the ball's in the air. Like, he'll go up there and he'll battle with guys. Maybe not the finisher that you want him to be. Finds himself, he's always around the catch point whenever it comes to that. He has leaping skills to defend jump balls when he's in position. He's a rangy defender. And he was a core special teamer as a sophomore. So he's got a lot of experience. I think that the issue is that why is he never healthy, right? And that kind of is the most important aspect, is availability, right? I really like him a lot on film from what I did see. His MRAs turned out to be fine. All his injuries turned out to be okay. Nothing that's like major within the last 2 years. They're just kind of minor bumps and bruises. But the Achilles injury kind of saps the speed. He ended up running a 4.56 40-yard dash, which isn't great for that position in particular. The Chargers have a really young group of cornerbacks on the roster right now. Young cornerbacks, nobody's really a star. There's even a starting slot position open. He's a guy that could come in and compete if he ends up, showing out pretty well. He was a 3-year starter at Ohio State. played for 5 years there. Yeah, 5 years. I think that it's just going to come down to how healthy is he for this season. So another guy that I think that could be a sleeper to make the practice, make the roster, the actual 53-man roster, because I feel like we are thin at cornerback right now. And he was a 4-star recruit, so it's not like he doesn't have the pedigree.
Right. The other D lineman I looked at, more of an interior guy, Terrence Lang out of Colorado, big 6'4", 280-pound kid. He racked up 91 tackles, 53 solo tackles, 19 and a half for loss with 8 sacks, knocked down 7 passes at the line, and also recovered a fumble in 53 career games with the Buffs. In 2022, he appeared in 12 games, finished with 40 tackles, 1 sack, 5 tackles for loss, 5 third down stops, 3 hurries, got that fumble recovery, and also batted down 3 passes. And so did all of that in a 3-year career, all as a starter at Colorado. He was primarily tasked with, being big, blowing up running holes, and just being that big base kind of D lineman that we're typical to seeing, rather than being used as that interior pass rusher. That really wasn't his not really what they were asking him to do there. And I think that shows. 3 seasons, only 8 sacks. He can do it, but it wasn't really. They had other guys that can get after the passer. Very, very strong though, and that's what you're getting from him as a interior player. He's not going to be a guy to get blown around a whole lot, and I expect him to be that traditional in the dirt kind of D end. And can see him move inside. He played mostly on the edge, but I could see him sliding into 3 or maybe 5 with the Chargers. I think Gerard Clark's fit is much better for this team because he's a much better pass rusher in my opinion. But I do see Lang with a strong training camp, having that versatility, multiple places along the playing at multiple positions and being able to do both things well. I could see him, getting on the coaching staff's good side and having them take a flyer. I still think it's Gerard Clark's, spot to lose. But I was kind of impressed with Lang's versatility as a D lineman.
And that was your final prospect, right?
I looked at Taiwan Mullen.
Okay, gotcha. So I'll talk about Tyler Huseman. Another place I think we're kind of thin at is running back in terms of for as many years as I can remember, we've been carrying 4 running backs. It's just been something that we've typically done every single year. This guy was a UDFA, went to North Dakota. He's a pretty big back, 6 foot, 215 pounds. He's a north and south runner. He's an old guy too, 6 years in college football, and didn't really break out until this last year. We just barely got over 1,000 yards rushing, 12 touchdowns. He's kind of a bigger guy. And you were talking about what's our 4th string running back you were just talking about from Missouri?
Roundtree.
Larry Roundtree hasn't done anything to solidify his place on this roster. And I think that this is a guy that could really challenge and potentially be, especially if we're trying to find a special teamer, not super, super athletic, but athletic enough for the position. 4.5 240, 10.2 broad jump, 35-inch vert, which is pretty nice. So he's got a lot of the things you need to make this roster as a special teamer. He ended up getting a 7.96 RAS out of a possible 10, according to MathBomb. So he's got some athleticism to him, but I think that it just took him so long to kind of break out, and he wasn't playing top-level competition. There's going to be a learning curve there. I don't think he's as developed as he needs to be to really take that position on. So really hard to find film on him because, North Dakota. So I'll let you go ahead and take your last player.
Yeah, let's round this thing out. I took a look at Taiwan Mullen out of Indiana, a little smaller back at 5'10", 170 pounds. As Charger fans, we're a little familiar with his older brother, Trayvon Mullen, formerly with the Raiders. Now he's with the Ravens. But Taiwan, came onto the scene and just took off. Tied for 11th in the country and just second amongst all freshmen in 2019 with 13 pass breakups. He had a really good season as a sophomore and probably could have declared following his 2021 season, but kind of got all of that momentum slowed with that ankle injury, and then came back. Didn't have an explosive season, but was kind of dealing with the rollover effects of that ankle injury. But when it comes to Taiwan, you're looking at a very, very gifted athlete. He has all the athleticism in the world to carry on vertical routes, to mirror receivers. His problem is he's very, very gullible. You give this kid a nice head fake, and he's going to commit all the way. And so you see him kind of disregard technique and he disregards his technique because he has the athleticism, especially at the collegiate level, to just rely on that to get himself back into the play. And when you see the fact that he runs a 4.4 40-yard dash, had a 4.4 20-yard shuttle, has a 32-inch vertical, threw up 19 bench press reps despite being 170-something pounds, 7-second 3-cone drill, you see why he will resort to that. He's a phenomenal athlete. Very quick, very confident. You're not going to have this guy get down on himself. Even if he gets, beat big, he's going to come back and make a play. I think you can see it, that the obvious drawback, not being super big. I don't think he's going to be able to cut it as a boundary corner. I just think, especially at the NFL, you're going to put a guy like this on DK. This guy's going to get chucked for 30 yards. I just think he's going to get out-muscled. But still works very, very hard in run support. I could see him getting walled off, but I do think he is a really solid tackler when you're looking at the undrafted DBs. I think he plays the most physical. He's like a little pit bull. He wants to get in your face, and he's not going to blow you up, but he's willing to get in there and mix it up. I think that because of his play style, he'll be a better fit immediately day one as a special team guy. It's interesting to see with guys like Jaw Taylor and Dean Leonard, who were really good for us in that phase last year, getting more time on defense. Kind of interesting to see if they're going to kind of move away from special teams guys, and you're going to need a guy like Taiwan to kind of fill in their role. But think he's interesting as a special team guy, looking to take snaps as that slot corner in emergencies.
The last player I'll go and I'll talk about breaking down is going to be Pokey Wilson out of Florida State. This guy kind of reminds me of M80, Malcolm Floyd a little bit. He's not quite as big. Like Malcolm Floyd was like 6'5", 6'4", like he was giant. But in terms of their play style, like he's a go up and get it type of player. He'll out muscle. He's only 6 foot, and he was really in a bad offense, bad situation there at Florida State. He's actually been there so long. He was actually teammates with Derwin James when he was a freshman. So he's been there for a long, long time. Over the last 2 seasons, 53 receptions, 877 yards. He's played under 6 different offensive coordinators, 3 different wide receiver coaches, 3 different head coaches in Tallahassee. He's a physical receiver, but he's just had no consistency around him. And that whole, I can't think of very many offensive Florida State players that have come out of that school through the draft in a while. It's
like the only guy I'm thinking of. Oh,
James Winston was the last one that I can actually remember.
Zay Flowers, we just got one, but I think
Zay Flowers is Boston College.
That's right. They both wear the same colors. I get them.
Yeah. So no, not even him. What's the running back for the Rams? He was drafted. Cam Akers. Cam Akers is one of the last Florida State guys that I can remember. So yeah, they just had no consistency there, and maybe that's what it is for him, right? He was a pretty high recruit. Ends up picking a big school. Florida State's always been known for being a big football school. They've had their issues over there, but we are already set with our legit 6 wide receivers are going into next season. So his only hope of making this team is going to be through the practice squad. But, M80, didn't make the roster until like his third or fourth year, in the league. So like he was on the practice squad that entire time. This guy might be a stash and develop type of player. I like his ability to go up and just fight for the ball. Like he just out muscles guys, and he's not super big when he does it. He's just really good at just timing it. I don't know what it is. So Pokey Wilson, that's really it for undrafted free agents. The only one that I'm really excited about is Gerard Clark. Do you have any of those guys that you're actually like excited about, think is going to make the roster? Or
I don't. Not. I mean, I like the guys all those guys I looked at. I like as long-term projects, guys that I'm willing to take a flyer on as a practice squad guys. I'd like some new blood in there. I think there's been a lot of consistency, and it's just kind of stale for me. I haven't seen the progression that I would like from guys that have been in the system for 2-3 years. Besides that, I think we're really well-rounded. This front office has done a really good job the last couple of seasons of putting together a solid team. We don't have many glaring holes. Now I'd like a couple of pieces here and there, but I think we're going to see those guys here in the next week or two sign as those late, like similar to the Bryce Callahan and the Vanoy signings last year. Some vets, but for these guys, I don't think any of them, the guys I looked at, are going to make the roster. I think Gerard Clark probably has the best path based on the position he plays and his skill set. But none of these guys get me super excited.
Depth as well, right?
Yeah, I just think we're really, really well-rounded, and none of these guys really excite me more than the depth piece ahead of them, because none of these guys are starters. These guys are all have question marks. They went undrafted for a reason, but these guys out of the bunch that we brought into camp, these ones give me the most excited, and I kind of touched on why when I was breaking them down.
I got you. So I was going to pull up the magazine. So I've been working on the magazine. I'm trying to finish it here pretty soon, but I might bring it to you guys next week and show you guys a little bit of it. It looks like I am about 40 pages through.
Ooh.
And I need to a little bit more, like almost 50 pages through. So it's almost done. Hopefully I'll be finishing that in the next like 2 weeks or so. We got a football game that we're going to in Green Bay.
Yeah.
I did get those tickets, so we are going to that November 19th game. Pay up.
It's on my to-do list.
So not too bad. We got some good seats. We'll be at that game. So we've got the magazine coming up. We've got the Green Bay Packers game coming up way later. But I did go ahead and get that. I have no idea what we're going to be talking about next week, but we'll definitely get into it and figure out. I'll save it. I'll save it for next week because we need content.
You never know. It's going to be important. So tune in next week.
All right, cool. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys later. Outro.